and a lot of times my work is around stress management. And one of the companies I work for said, you know, when we publicize stress management, no one really wants to go because they don't want to admit what's going on in their life right now. So can you come up with a different title? So I was in Colorado at a restaurant called Bubba Gump's. Anybody ever go to Bubba Gump's? Okay, Bubba Gump's is a really fun place. And I noticed that all of these quotes were there about life. And I thought, what a perfect entry for my stress management. So, we have life is like a box of chocolates. Now, one of the gifts of a box of chocolates, how many of you have gotten a box of chocolates that you can remember? Okay. Box of chocolate usually has many different kinds of chocolate. You never know what you're going to get. Right? And sometimes you bite into one and you say, oh, that is so good. I want another one of those. And you can't find it. And then sometimes you bite into one and you almost break your tooth. And you think, oop, no more of those. And so in reality, our lives are like that. And that's where I'm going with this presentation. It's really about you and your life and your time. And I'm going to ask you to do a couple of things. Hopefully I'll share some stories with you. Robert already got a story today. So he asked for a story and I gave him one. I'll share some stories. But most of my stories are tied to concepts. Most of what you remember in life are the experiences you share. And sometimes the experiences aren't personal, but they're stories that you hear. So I'll tell you some stories. I'd like you to think. I know it's early, but we're going to work through it. Third thing is, I hope that leaving here, your life is a little better for the time spent. So I will try to teach you some experiences or some practical skills that you can walk away with. As you look at it, I'm going to also challenge you, and I'll list things out by challenge as opposed to it. And I have to share with you, I don't know how far we're going to get today. I keep subtracting stuff from this presentation, but it seems to grow exponentially. And I'd like to have a good time. So can we agree with that? Okay. So, a couple ground rules. One, obviously you're going to respect each other because you're all locked in these booths and chairs, so you can't go anywhere anyways. Hands up. One of the things I like to do is have people talk in my classes and my presentations, and they get really good at it. But then they have a hard time stopping. You ever had that experience? So here's what I like to do, is if I raise my hand, you raise your hand. Go ahead. Raise it up. Good. If your hand is up and my hand is up, the message is, stop talking. Got it? It's really great because somebody will be talking away and everybody will, okay, got the idea? And then if you have questions during my presentations, don't be afraid to stop me and ask. If I get too diverted from the content, someone will push me back on track, but I'm usually pretty good. All set? Good. So here's what I'd like you to do. Identify one thing that makes you smile.
My family.
Okay? Call them out. Your family, your kids? Kittens, grandkids? Playing outside? Music? Say it? Sunshine? Yeah. You don't smile much in Michigan, do you? Okay. Second thing. How did you spend your day yesterday? With the person next to you, introduce yourself. If you already know them, talk to somebody else. And tell them, you got 30 seconds. How'd you spend your day? Go.
I know you. I know you.
So just so you know, this is my bridge. And this is how all of these stuff. And I'm only doing that because you were not as
I think there's at least one or two other people who are wearing lightning tax.
Give yourself a hand. You did really good. Oh, I got to tell you, I do like to have a good time in class. So the next person that walks through that door, would you give them an applause? Even if it's Steve. Okay. Okay, got it? One or two more. Something you do to recover at the end of each day that you can talk about. Talk to somebody else. 30 seconds. Go ahead.
I drink a double shot. And I need Starbucks.
I said you could talk about, and you noticed immediately, no boundaries. Here it is.
I'm talking about Starbucks.
Oh, I didn't know.
I know. Starbucks. Yeah, they make double shots from Starbucks in a can. Oh,
Just a comment, you might want to get alternate arms so you don't get too tired. Okay, one last one, okay? I'd like you to identify 3 priorities. Just think about them. 3 priorities you have. Got it? So, I know, I think faster than others. So the question is, what gets in the way of having your best life? Okay? I like to use pictures, so if you can tell what that is, you will understand what gets in the way. That's my car, by the way. And that was on Lansing Avenue in Jackson. Okay, so stuff happens, folks. We all know it. And the reality is, you don't change it. Stuff happens. That's the way life is. So I'm going to go through a little of that first, just to put it up on the table. So which of these affect you? And you can say as much or as little as you want. First of all, in our society, the rate of change is phenomenal. I was raised in a 3-generation household with my grandparents, my mother, my father. We had a business down below with my uncle and my aunt. That was the way it was. When my grandfather started to work, he started a business. He came to this country from the old country, started working. He was in the same business for 57 years. He didn't retire until he was 87, and the only reason he retired is because my uncle said he'd only wait on customers he liked and it wasn't good for business. Okay? Secondly, your relationships are more complicated than any kind of Isn't it fun? So now the second person that comes in, you're gonna clap and poop. Practice that, ready? Clap. Oh, you're good. Okay, so second piece is relationships. Relationships are more complicated today than ever before. Right? You all know that. I can easily divide the class in half and say, half of you have already been divorced. Some of you are laughing. That must have been a good one. Okay, but we spend more time getting into, working on, and getting out of relationships than any society in the past. Communications. I love communications. Holy cow. Anyways, this is an intimate night at home. See if you can relate. Honey, can I have a beer? Get it yourself, for Pete's sake. 5.5 hours a day, your little ones are watching TV. At least. That doesn't talk about video time, computer time, just TV. And a lot of the values that were passed on from generation to generation in the past are getting lost. Your society is more material. I will be happy when I get a new car, when I have the best clothes, when I have a nice house. And you know what? As soon as you get them, what are you thinking about? The next thing. We are so extrinsic in our values that issues around purpose and meaning get lost in things. We talked about media. We tend to have a sense of a loss of control. Now, have any of you ever read a mechanical bull or ridden on one? Okay, my wife did, and she thought that with a glass of beer, she could do better. And then she thought with 2 glasses, it'd make it even nicer. The only thing it did is it dulled her senses when she fell. So if you look at your lifestyle and you say, well, okay, so what? We have an issue that in our society that we tend not to pay much attention to what's going on inside. We don't listen very well. And so when you begin to look at how we respond, issues of anxiety, muscle tension, sleep problems, stomach problems, depression, immune issues are all common. And usually all it is your body talking to you. It's saying, listen up. Anybody ever read the book, A Whack in the Side of the Head? It's on the 10 bestseller list 30 years ago. And what it's about is that some of us don't learn anything until we get hit really hard. How's your relationship? Really, really good. Really. Then why are you getting a divorce? I don't know, I thought it was great. Right? How's your body? Oh, I'm feeling good. Do you have any Pepto-Bismol? How are you making out? Fine. I play light of these, but really they lead to bigger things. And they're just precursors to chronic illness. If you look at the reading in the areas of managing stress and health, you'll see that probably in the realm of 90% plus are related to our lifestyle in terms of many of the issues. And even if they aren't directly related, they're indirectly related. For example, if you look at diabetes, you might say, well, come on, he's got a sugar problem. What's that have to do with stress? If you're diabetic, you know the more stressed you are, the harder it is to control your diabetes. You also know that obesity contributes to it. So it's not just a simple thing. We are a whole. Does anybody know about the aspen tree? Come on, there must be a biologist in here somewhere. What about the aspen tree?
Deers eat them.
Deers eat them? Yeah, that's true. And they're pretty. Say it?
They're dying in the Rockies.
They are dying, but do you know that they share a common root system? And the reality is, so do you. And so we're all connected in some way. And so as you begin to think about your life and your time and how you're spending your energy, recognize that nothing happens in isolation. You have a really stressful time in your life, it comes back at some point. Now, some of you might be saying, you know, I don't have any of those problems. You're in denial. All set? Any questions? So if you think you have problems, just think if you were that puppy. So life is like a 2-minute warning. You have choices. I was telling Robert earlier that we, as a family, we live by the code that life is about experiences. And this statement is really important for you to carry away from this conversation. So as you think about it, where am I going with it? Well, when my son was about 7 years old, we took a week-long rock climbing school in Colorado. Anybody been to Boulder, Colorado? Okay. Ever been on the Flatirons? You know what the Flatirons are? Well, we went up the Flatirons. And the first day we went out climbing, my son, who was real energetic, said, I want to go first. And so we were on a rock wall, and he starts to climb up a little bit, and he gets stuck. And being the kind, gentle parent we are, he'd say, I don't know where to go. And we said, no hurry, we're not in a hurry, what are your options? And the little kid hung out on the wall for another 15 minutes. I was on this rope, hanging there, looking around. And finally, he gets a way to get up that mountain, up that rock slide. It was great. He didn't complain for the next 5 days. And on the last day, we did the Flatirons in Colorado. And I think we did 7 or 8 pitches. Now, a pitch is you climb up, you take your ropes, climb up again, take your ropes, and so on. So we get up about 500 feet, and I say the dumbest thing. I say, I get stuck. And I say, I don't know where to go. And I hear this little wimpy voice. Hey, Dad, what are your options? And so life is, folks. You do have choices. No, you may not always like them, but recognize they exist. And if you ever get to a point in time where you don't believe you have choices, get help. Get help. Okay? So, challenge 1. In order for you to do anything that I'm going to talk about, I'm going to ask that you really think clearly about what your priorities are. Because you won't take the time to do them if they aren't on your list. So here's the big question. I asked you to think about 3. Were you on the list? How many of you had you on the list? Okay. This is wisdom speaking here. Okay? You too, you're wise. This is very typical. And the reality is, people say, but, you know, if I'm number 1 on the list, then, you know, this won't get done and that won't get done. I challenge you that if you're not on your own list in some significant way, those people you love will not get served as well, your work will not be as good, and your God won't get everything he deserves or she deserves. So as I go through the conversation, really think about, can I move myself further on the list? And I will give you a tool to do that. You will have a good time with this tool. So what do clear priorities really do for you? They give and create order. You see, 30 years ago, Steve didn't tell you how long I'd been here. 30 years ago, I was department chairperson. I was active in the community. I was on the National Wellness Committee. I was a lot of things. And then God started talking to me and my body went to pot. And I had to be deplaned in Chicago because I had problems. And I ended up in an emergency room in Chicago. And the doctor said, well, if we can't get this back in rhythm and we can't get your blood pressure up, we're probably going to have to paddle you. I go, not like this, right? You go, no. Okay. My blood pressure got back in shape. I was fine. But I spent the night at a friend's house. And it was there that I said, where does my real joy in life come from? And where is my power? And generally we find that our power is in our locus of control, that which we can touch. So I challenge you to think about your locus of control, and I challenge you to figure out, where does your joy come from? Where's your passion? What are you truly passionate about? So order comes from that, because as a result of that experience, I started creating some very significant boundaries. I stopped being chairperson. I got off all committees, and I focused on the 2 things that were most important: my family and my teaching. Up till then, I was just like a rat in a maze, jumping from one place to the other. You don't have to do that. Let me back up. If your priorities are clear, how many of you have gone on a relationship lately? Gone on a vacation lately? Did you have trouble getting motivated to leave? No. If my wife gets set for a vacation, there's no question we're going. Right? And why? Because it's a priority and it's central to where she is. When your priorities are clear, you don't have problems with motivation because you're really excited about what you're doing. Seek your passion. Does it get simpler? Yeah, because you say, no, I'm not going to do this, or yes. And again, power, there's lots of power. Now, I will tell you that some people will get uncomfortable when you start setting boundaries because they're used to you doing what? Everything. And who do I go to as a person who likes to get a lot of stuff done? No. Are you kidding? My wife has she's so clear on things. No. I go to the people that are easy. So if I come and I see Terry and I say, I know Terry, he'll do it. So who do I go to? It's easy. I go to Terry. But we'll deal with that in a minute. Clear on this idea of clear priorities? Okay. Second challenge. I'd really like you to begin to think about this whole notion of the law of attraction. And basically what it says is, what you focus on grows. Now, I need to share with you that as a society, I think most of what we focus on tends to be negative. So if Dorothy comes, she doesn't need this, so don't make any judgment. But if Dorothy comes to me and says, I'm going to go on a weight loss program, I want to lose 20 pounds, and I'm going to diet. She doesn't need that, okay? What does your mind do immediately when you say, I'm going to go on a diet? What do you think about?
But you have to give up.
What do you have to give up? You have to focus on what you can't have. And so if I hold your little chocolate up here, by the way, you can eat these. If I hold, yeah, I know. But if I say you can't have it, you want it. So I would challenge you to make positive goals. So what's the opposite of a positive or a negative goal of I want to lose weight? I want to get healthy, or I want to be the most beautiful person I can be. And maybe I'll drop a little weight, but I want to focus on being beautiful. Different direction. Got it? So create positive mental images. Now, I can't tell you how powerful those are. By the way, almost any topic I'm talking about could become a class, and it has been for me. But if you get on YouTube and you want to see a video on the law of attraction, just pump it in. You'll get a whole presentation on it that really does a great job of letting you know great things happen. We love you.
I did that on purpose.
She needed that, though.
Oh, they were clapping for me?
Oh, give it to her again so nice and round. This whole idea of the law of attraction is pretty amazing. But one of the things that's central to it is you have to get a clear picture of what you want. And it may not come out totally to the design you asked, but it can come out and will come out. My family, again, has been central to this with me. But as you begin to look at experiences, I can tell you 100 different stories that if you get a clear vision, if you say, this is what I really want, some way, somehow, it will happen. And it may not happen the way you want. Goth talks about, and I may say his name wrong, Goth, but he might, if you look at his statements, one of them says is that boldness is really critical to this whole notion of belief. And that once you commit to something, wonderful and marvelous things can happen. And they can happen. I mean, if some of you look back 5 or 10 years ago and look at where you are now, you may not ever believed you could have gotten to this point in your life. Some of you said, I would have never believed I got here at all. But the bottom line is there's great power in commitment to a belief and a priority. Don't let your life be like a sailboat without a rudder. You go wherever the wind pushes you. My son was at Western Michigan University. And he went the route, changed his major about 6 times. And finally, he said, I think I want to be a college professor. Now, this was 5 years ago. And I said, and I tried to coax him out of it. I said, the market's terrible. He goes, yeah, I know. He said, but that's what I want to do. So he goes through this big thing, and he was in his master's program. And the long and short of it is, he ends up with a job teaching at Notre Dame. You know, he's 26 years old. How do you do that? Commitment to the priority. Now, I'm not saying that we're going to all end up there. But the point being is, you get clear on your priorities, things happen. Oh. What did we do here?
Want me to communicate? Oh, you got it.
Go ahead.
I think it seems to be working.
No.
No?
There it is. So, be very clear that there are issues with time. I can tell you to have clear priorities, but the reality is you're pulled in 100 different ways. So there's a couple of things that get in the way. And you need to be very clear. I do not approach time management with lists and a set of goals that are general. I did that. How many of you have ever seen those executive planners that are like a notebook, and you have cards in them and you move them one to the other? I was so anal about that, I had 6 sheets of stuff. As soon as I get something done, I'd move something else in its place. That's not time management. That's chaos management. Because I was doing everything. So the first question I would ask you is what's on your list consistent with your priorities? So remember I asked you how'd you spend your time yesterday? You're smiling.
I love the chaos management.
The reality is if you look at yesterday or the week and you say, these are the things I spent the majority of my time on, are they consistent with those priorities that you squared away? If they're not, you're giving away a lot of energy and time. So, just a couple quick things. One, these are pitfalls. How many of these affect you? One, are you disorganized? Yeah, some of you are going, And I would challenge you when you leave here today, look at the person's car that you drove in with. That might be the first sign. Lack of direction. I know I hit home on that one. Okay, lack of direction goes back to priorities. Too many priorities. Here's what I hear often when I'm really spending time with this. I just have too many things I have to do. No, you have too many priorities. You got to knock some things off the list. Okay. If everything is important, guess what? Then nothing is important. Just can't happen. Lost time. I know none of you do this, especially you IT people. Okay? None of you do this. Procrastinate? None of you do that? And the inability to set boundaries. I think that's Guantanamo, so don't worry about it. So, do you say yes often? How many of you say yes when you really want to say no? Sure, we all get stuck in that boat. One of the things that's really important to me is a sense of self. And when the little voice in you is saying, no, practice this, no, no, and out of your mouth comes the word yes, the reality, one, you're going to hurt yourself. But the reality is that when you say yes and your voice is saying no, you're giving away a part of your self-worth, in my opinion. Now, there are many reasons to say yes, even though your boss is standing over you, you probably don't want to get fired. I'll give you a way to deal with that in a few minutes. But the reality is when you're looking at this, if you say yes, you can commit to it. But if you don't say yes, then how do you respond? How many of you have learned how to say no? Good. Do your friends still like you? Well, I'm going to give you a skill that we'll practice. So I'd like you to think of a situation where you wish you had said no, but out of that beautiful mouth of yours, you said yes. Got it? Everybody got a situation? Okay, with the